Thanks, DJ. Good evening, everybody. As DJ said, my name is Mark Garetz, and I'm a national. Well, I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Are you hearing that, DJ?
No, I'm not.
Okay, maybe it's gone. Okay, so again, my name is Mark Garetz, and I'm a national Floriani educator. And tonight's project is going to be our Decor coaster. And before we get right into the project, we're going to take a little sidestep for a second, because I want to talk to you for just a minute or two about downloading your monthly projects. Now, those of you that own My Decorative Quilter and you've signed up for the My Floriani Club, you know that this is where you come, this page right here, to get your free monthly projects. And you normally would click right here on Install the Current Month's Project. If you haven't done it, you don't have any of the projects, you can click here to install all the projects. But we've changed how this works a little bit, and that's why I want to go over it with you, because it's generating a lot of questions. So you're going to come right here to this page, and I'll show you where that page is here. If I scroll up, it is right here in the Monthly Designs Projects tab right here. This little button is where you get to it. Now, if you also have FTCU, you're going to see this one here on the top. If all you have is MDQ, you're just going to see the MDQ one. So let me scroll back down, and we'll go ahead and go through this. I'm going to click right here on Install Current Month's Project, and it's going to download a file. And you can see down here it's downloading a zip file. Now, what it used to do is it used to download an EXE file, and then you would it would come up and ask you if you wanted to save or run that, and the preferred way of doing it was to click Run, and then it would just go ahead and after a few Windows error messages, it would, or warning messages, it would allow you to run the program to install the projects. The problem is a lot of antivirus software is now rejecting those EXE files because they could contain harmful information. Now, ours don't, but in general, it's not a good practice to download an EXE file directly from the web and execute it. So the computer is trying to protect you by not doing that. So instead, what we've changed the format to is a standard zip file, but that means you now have to change the way you're working with it. So in most Windows, it'll put it down here. If it doesn't, you want to put, check your download folder and find it. But you can just click on that to open it. Inside that zip, you'll find currentproject.exe. Now, if you want, you can come here and extract the files. Just take note of where it puts them. If you do decide to extract all the files, so then you'll have to come back and find this again. But you can just double-click it right from here. There's no need to extract it. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click currentproject.exe. We're going to get the usual warning from Windows. You can go ahead and click Yes. Okay. We're going to get the pop-up from the program itself to install the designs. Click OK. And it's just going to happen just that fast, and boom, our designs are installed. So if you didn't follow that or you have questions, as you know, we're going to put this webinar up online. So just revisit it and watch this section of the video again, and it'll all become clear. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my browser window now, and I'm going to start up my PowerPoint presentation. And I always like to show you what we're going to do before we get started, so you have some idea in your head of what the project's going to look like when it's finished. So again, this is a Decor coaster. It was designed by Rita Gazard, and it's presented by me, Mark Garetz. We've actually got two projects for you this month. Tonight, in our webinar, we're only going to go over one of them, and that will be the round coaster that you see there with the G monogram in the middle. The one you see in the upper left, the square one, Rita calls that the fun coaster. That's an optional project that you can create. It's in the printed PDF instructions that's part of the current project download that we just did. So if you do the one tonight and you want to go on and do the second one, feel free to go ahead and do that. We're giving you that little bonus project. So I'm going to go ahead and close my PowerPoint now, and we're going to go right into MDQ software. So you're going to want to open your software. If you don't see a blank screen like this, you want to click your New page icon, which is right up here in the upper left. So go ahead and click that to get a blank screen. And the first thing we're going to do, as we always do, is we're going to make sure that your workspace at home is set up identical to our workspace here when we created the project. So when you open it, it may or may not look quite like this, but don't worry, we're going to fix it so it will. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we are in inches mode. You can see if you're in inches by looking right up here in the upper right-hand corner of the workspace. It should say inches. In any case, go ahead and position your cursor anywhere on the ruler and right-click. And when you do that, you're going to get this little pop-up box. Check that you're in inches. If you happen to be in metric, just simply click inches, and it will change into inches. The next thing we're going to do is come up to our Tools menu right here. We're going to go ahead and click our Tools menu, drop down to General Options, and click that. And we're going to come over here to our icons on the left-hand side, click our grid settings here. And for this project, we're going to set our grid spacing to 0.5. So if you have maintain aspect ratio checked, and these are equal values, you can simply type 0.5 in one, and the other one will follow along. The other thing we want to make sure we have set for this particular project is Snap to Grid. So that setting is right here. Make sure that Snap to Grid is checked. And when you've done setting up your spacing to 0.5 and 0.5 and Snap to Grid, come down here to your digitizing icon. So go ahead and click that. Just make sure that you are in simple draw mode for your outline input mode. And if you haven't changed it from the default, you will be in this mode. But if you, for some reason, have changed it, switch back to simple draw, and then drop down here to the bottom and click OK. And the very next thing we want to do is we want to make sure we've got a lot of room to work with here on our screen. So we want to change our zoom percentage, and that's right up here. So right now we're zoomed in 200%. We need to zoom out a little bit. So go ahead and click the down arrow here by the number and change from 200 to 100. So go ahead and left click on that. And you'll see when you do that, you get a lot more grid lines here. Now, for some reason, your grid lines are not showing up. If your screen looks like this and it's blank, then you want to make sure that you can see the grid lines for the beginning of this project. So in order to enable your grid lines, that's the icon right over here on the left. This turns your grid on and off. So go ahead and click that to turn your grid back on. Okay, so we're ready to get started creating this project. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a circle. And that circle is going to be made with our artwork tool. And the artwork tool is right here now. Artwork is a line that's drawn on the screen. And we can create that line, or actually turn that line into a piece of stitching. Or we can just go ahead and leave it as a line to show us where to place things. And we're going to actually do both of those things in this particular project. So we're going to use a circle. So to get to a circle, what you want to do is click on this little down arrow here to the right of the icon. And that's going to bring a little drop-down box. And you want to come down and check ellipse, which is our circle. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag from the upper left down to the lower right, and we're going to create a circle when we do that. But in order to create an actual 4-inch circle, we want to start our clicking and dragging in a certain place. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our ruler here, and we're going to see that it's got a 0 here in the center of the screen on the top ruler. And on the left ruler, you can see we have some numbers here. This top one up here is a 3. So what we want to do is we want to get the cursor, when we start to click, we want to be on the 3, excuse me, I'm sorry, I need to start again. We want to be on the -3 right here, and the, no, I'm sorry again. We want to do 0 and 3. Okay, so we're going to do 0 and 3. So we're going to come over here to 0 and 3. So that's right in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click and we're going to drag down and over to the right and down. And when we're going to go to is 4 over here and -1, which is right here. So what we're going to end up with is right about here. Okay, and this will become, it sounds a little complicated, but it'll look a lot simpler when you start to draw. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click, hold the mouse down, and drag. And you can see, because we have Snap to Grid turned on, as I drag, the circle is snapping to various orientations. And if I keep going at a perfect diagonal, and I end up at -1, which is where I am now, I don't have to be right on it because I've got that Snap to Grid on. You can see it also automatically makes a perfect circle. So now when I let up, what we have is an artwork circle here that is 4 inches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that circle bigger and in the center of our screen so it's easier to work with. The shortcut for doing that, and this is a great trick if you don't know it, is to come over here to your magnifying glass, which is your zoom tool, and double-click that. And that's going to make it big and in the center of our screen. So now we're going to go ahead and start to add our decors in here. And to do that, we're going to come up right here to our decor icon, and we're going to click that once. And we are going to use one of the flourishes in here, and it is flourish number 33. So you want to scroll down a little bit so you can find flourish number 33. Go ahead and select that by clicking on it, and then click OK. And then that's going to come in. Now, this flourish, I'm going to click off it so you can see the colors. And let me turn on 3D mode so it gets a little bit easier to see. And what you can see is we've got 2 colors in this flourish. We've got this color right here, which is actually color number 10, and that's a Floriani birch color. And we have this color up here, a darker brown, which is Floriani brand color. For this particular project, we don't want this bottom piece right here. We're going to eliminate it. Now, because they're different colors, it's actually easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it again. And you notice when I click on it that the whole thing is selected. That's because it's grouped. And when it's grouped like that, we can't actually separate the two, but we need to. So we're going to come up here, and we're going to click our Ungroup icon. So if I click Ungroup, now I can select the pieces of this individually. And because they're separate colors, over here in my sequence view, I can very easily select the part that we don't want, which is this birch color right here. So if I just single click on that, I've selected the bottom piece. To get rid of it, all we have to do is come up here and click our cut icon, and it is gone. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to work with just the remaining part of the flourish here. So in order to do that, I need to select it. So over here in my sequence view, the simplest way to do that is go ahead and click on the top level there. And the very, very first thing we need to do to this is this shape doesn't quite fit going around this circle. So we are going to change the shape. And to do that, we're going to come up here into our Properties box, and we're going to select our Transform icon, which is the last icon, and click that. If you don't have icons here, you have words, select on the word that says Transform. Now, normally when we transform something, especially when we're resizing, we want to resize proportionally. So we have Maintain Aspect Ratio checked. For this particular portion of the project, we don't want to do that. We actually want to squish it and lengthen it out a little bit. So I'm going to uncheck Maintain Aspect Ratio. This is going to allow me to independently change the width and the height. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our width to 1.4. So I'm going to click in the box there, backspace over the 6.3, and change that to a 4. Then I'm going to come down here to our height, and I'm going to change that to 0.75 inches. So I'm going to backspace over the 4.1, type in 7.5, and then I'm going to click Apply. When I click Apply, you can see that changes the height and width here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put this into position in our design. And I'm going to drag it into position. And you can see right here, I've got a little X in the center. It's a little bit hard to see in this view right now, but there's a little X in the center of the design. So what you want to do is bring your cursor over anywhere in here. As long as you've got that little hand icon, simply click and drag and put that approximately right there in the center point right there. So it's going to be between this top line and this bottom line and kind of aligned on this line right here. And you can see I got it just a little bit off, so I'm just going to nudge it over just a little and get that into position. Okay, so now that I've got that in position and I don't have anything over here, I'm going to again use that trick of double-clicking the zoom tool to get everything centered and back in the screen. Now we're going to make a copy of this because we want to put one down here in the bottom right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my copy icon. It's still selected, so I just need to come up to my copy icon, click that, and I'm going to click paste. And that's going to make a second copy of it. That second copy is automatically going to be selected. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to flip this vertical so it faces the other way. I've got a convenient icon to do that called Flip Vertical. It's right up here. I'm going to simply click that. And now you can see that we have two of them. And I'm going to drag that one down to the bottom and position it just like we did the other one, except this one's going to be at the bottom of our circle. So I'm going to bring that down here and position that one, and that looks pretty good. I'm pretty much right on there. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to change the color of the bottom piece. And the reason I'm going to change that color is because we're going to then select both of these and copy them around. And that's a shortcut that's going to save us a lot of time. But if we do that, our sewing sequence is going to be really messed up. And if they're all the same color, it's going to be a little bit harder for us to select the ones that we want to change the sequence of. So by changing the color, it allows us to change the sequence easier. And we'll change the color back when we're done with that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change the color to color number 10, which is right down here in our palette. We do that by right-clicking on color number 10 in the palette. And you can see now I've got one in Bran and one in Birch over here in my sequence view. Okay, so once we've done that, we are going to select both of them. So what you want to do is right-click anywhere here in the sequence view, and you'll see a menu that comes up, and you'll find an item right here called Collapse All near the top. What that does is it gets rid of all the detail and just shows us the high level of everything. So you see when I click Collapse All, now I've just still got my original artwork circle, my first flourish, and my second flourish. I want to select all the flourishes, so I'm going to select that one. And now I'm going to hold down my Control key. You can't see me doing that, but trust me, I'm holding down Control. And I'm going to select by clicking on the second one, and that Control click allows us to select multiple items. So now I've got both of them selected. We're going to copy them. So I'm going to come up here to my copy icon and click copy once. I'm going to move over to my paste icon, and I'm going to paste them in. And you can see now I've got a second set in here. And then I'm going to rotate them to the right 45 degrees. Excuse me, rotate to the left. Excuse me, it is right 45 degrees. So I'm going to come up here to my rotate right icon, and I am going to click that. And you see when I do that, it moves them off. And they overlap a little bit here, and that's actually the effect that we want for this coaster. And what I'm going to do now is I've just done that copy, paste, and rotate. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times to fill in the rest of the circle. So what I've just pasted is automatically selected, so all I've got to do is click copy, paste, and rotate right. I'm going to do that 1 more time, copy, paste, and rotate right. And you can see now that I've got everything all filled in. I'm going to click off so you can see that well. Now I'm going to turn off 3D mode because I want to show you something that's going on here. When I'm in 3D mode, it's hiding the jump stitches. But if I turn off 3D mode, you can see I've got these little dotted lines here, and that means that this one's going to sew, then 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 this one, then this one, and it's just going to go crazy. So we're going to move the sequence around using our sequence view to get them to sew out in the right order. And now it'll become apparent why we've changed the colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all the brands together. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on the first brand here, actually the second brand. We're going to leave this one alone. When I click on that, you see it's this one over here. I'm going to simply click and drag it up over the top of the first one and let up my mouse. And it outputs them all together. It does expand them, so you want to come over here and click the little minus assigned by that first brand to unexpand them. And I'm just going to keep repeating that process till I get all the brands together. Now I need to scroll up to find the top, so I'm going to collapse it. I'm going to take the very last one, drag it up to here, and scroll back up to the top of my sequence view and collapse them. And now you can see I've got all the brands together and all the birches together. And if you see the little dotted lines here, you can see that it's going to sew out in a much more acceptable sequence and minimize those jump stitches. And when we minimize the distance that the head travels, we save a lot of sewing time. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to change the color of these ones, which we changed specifically in order to help us find the brands. We're going to change them all to brand. So I'm going to come over here and select birch, which is automatically going to select all of these. I'm going to come down to my color palette. I'm going to right-click on color number 9, which is our birch color. I'm going to come back to my sequence view, right-click, select collapse all, and now everything you can see is all brand, and you can see my jump stitches are all still going in a nice order. And so that is going to sew out much, much better than it would. And this completes the outline of the coaster. If you like this, you don't want to do anything else, you can stop right there. But we're going to go ahead and put a monogram into the center. And you don't need to use a monogram. You could put another decor in here, a little embroidery design, anything else you want to put in the center of that coaster. But this project is done with a monogram, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. To put in a monogram, we're going to come up here to our text tool, which is right here. Click on the text tool, come down somewhere into the center here, and you can see that when I've clicked on that text tool, my cursor changes into an A to remind me that I am in text mode. So if I click now, I'm going to get a character. It's going to be an A. It's always an A, and it's going to be in whatever font I last used. Now, Universi is the font that we're going to use in this particular example, so I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it alone. If you want to use a different font, feel free to do that. I don't want an A in there. In your example, in the pictures and in the printed instructions, it's a G. And of course it's a G because this project was done by Rita Gazard, but my last initial happens to be a G as well. So we're going to go ahead and change it to a G. So I'm going to put in a G. We're also going to make it a little bit bigger while we're here. The default of this font is 0.79 inches. We're going to make it 1.2 inches. So I'm going to backspace over this whole thing here, and I'm going to type in 1.2, and then I'm going to click Apply. And you can see I've got a much bigger G. Now you can see obviously it's in the wrong place. So I'm going to come over here where my cursor's in the middle, and you can see if I'm off, I'm still in text mode. If I come in here, I'm still in text mode, but now I'm in a mode where I can move it. You see how my cursor changes into a hand. And I've got this little diamond shape in the middle here. This is telling me where the center of the character is. Now, depending on the font that you pick and depending on the character itself, the mathematical center, which is what this is representing, may or may not be the visual center of that character. You can go ahead and use the mathematical center to sort of get it ballpark lined up here. So there it is in the center. But it looks a little off to me because visually that G isn't quite where it needs to be. Now, this grid, although it was useful for us positioning some things earlier, now it's kind of getting in the way. If it was mathematical, the grid would be perfect, but it isn't mathematical when we use the center of a visual item, not all the time anyway. So we're going to turn off the grid to keep it from distracting us, and our eyes want to make this in the center when that grid's there. So I'm going to go ahead and click my grid icon, turn it off, and then I'm going to position this visually just a little bit different in the center there. Okay, how about right there? Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I go ahead and turn my grid back on now. And it turns out it's pretty close to the mathematical center. It's off just a hair. You might want to put it in a different spot. Again, if you've got a different character, it may or may not be mathematically centered. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come in and we want to put in our placement and our tack down and our seam lines so that we can do this project in the hoop. And this is going to end up being a totally in the hoop project. It's pretty cool. Now, we're going to use our artwork here to create those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my sequence view, and I'm going to select the artwork, and it's the very first item here. So I'm going to click there, and that selects it. That automatically gets me out of text mode because it knows we've selected an artwork item. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 items out of this. We're going to make, as I said, a placement line, a tack down line, and a seam line. So we're going to need 3 outlines of that circle. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the one that's there, and we're going to paste it 2 more times to get 3. So I'm just going to click paste twice. So I'm going to click paste and paste. And you can see over here in my sequence view, now I have 3 identical circles. And again, those are all artwork. These are lines right now. They won't stitch, but we actually do need them to stitch. We want them to be run stitches. So we're going to convert them to run stitches all at once. So I'm going to click the top level here to select all of them. I could have also control-clicked them all, but I can also use the shortcut of selecting the top level here, so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to use our Convert to Run icon, which is right here, our Convert to Run, and we're going to just click that once, and magically now they're all going to be run stitches. I'm going to click the plus icon here to expand that, and you can see now we've got 3 identical run stitches. So we're going to go ahead and move one of them because we want that to stitch out last. So I'm going to select that one, and I am going to first change its stitch length. This is going to end up being our seam, and it's going to stitch out last. And I want a 2 millimeter stitch length for our seam. So I'm going to come up here to my properties for this run stitch, and I'm going to change the stitch length to 2 millimeters and click Apply. And then it's still selected. I'm going to move it to the bottom of the sequence view. Now I could click and drag it, but I also have a shortcut here, and it's called Move to Front. So if I click that, it's going to move it to the front of the sequence view along with the text, and it is going to put it down here. So we are now going to stitch that out last, and now we're going to work with the other remaining 2 runs. So I'm going to select both of those, again by clicking on the top level here to select both of those run stitch. And these are kind of placement and tack down stitches. They don't need to be as tight of a stitch. So I'm actually going to change them into a stitch length of 5. So I'm going to come up here and change them both at the same time to a stitch length of 5 and click Apply. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make one of them bigger because that's going to be our tack down. So our placement's going to be smaller. Our tack down's going to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to select the second one because we're going to stitch our placement line first, our tack down line second, and we're going to transform it to make it bigger. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click my transform icon. This time I'm going to reselect maintain aspect ratio before I do anything else, and I'm going to change the width to 4.35. So I'm going to backspace over to 00, type in 35. You can see that the bottom one automatically changes to match it because I have maintain aspect ratio checked. And then when I click Apply, I'm going to get a nice second line that's spaced out a little bit from the first one, and that's going to give us our tack down line. Now, if we just left this like this, when we put this in the machine, it would stitch this line and then this line. We don't want that to happen. We want it to stitch our placement line, and we want the machine to stop so that we can then place our batting and our fabric down. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cause the machine to stop by changing the color of the second run stitch. Now it should already be selected. So what you want to do is come down here to your color palette. It really doesn't matter what color we change to because you're probably not actually going to change the thread. So we're going to go ahead and use color number 2, which is red. And we're going to go ahead and right-click on color number 2. You can see now I've got a separate item here. And if you've got a single needle machine, this is going to automatically stop. If you have a multi-needle, we'll get to that when we get to our assembly instructions. Okay, so we are almost done here. All we need to do now is change the color of the monogram. It was created automatically in the default color of deep ocean or blue. And what we want to do is we want to change that to the same color as our Decors, and that was our brand color. So I'm going to come over here to my sequence view. I've got two things stitching out at the end. The first one in blue is going to be the text. The second one's going to be the run. We're going to keep our run in blue. So we're just going to simply, in our sequence view, click on the text item there, which is going to select it. So I also could have come in here and selected it here. This is a little more precise. And I'm going to change that to the same color as our Decor, which was the brand color. So I'm going to hover over color number 9 here and right-click. And now it is the same color as you can see here, and it's all going to stitch out in one sequence. So it's all going to stitch out very nicely. We'll stitch all the way around, and lastly, we'll stitch this G here. All that we need to do now is save this file because we're done with it. So we're going to come up here to our Save icon. So I'm going to click Save, and it's going to ask me where I want to put it. Now, the last thing I worked on was the December 2014 project. I don't want to save it there. If you've downloaded your project like we did in the beginning, you'll have a January folder. So go ahead and click on the January folder. It should say January 2015. You're going to already find the Decor coaster in here. So if you just want to stitch it out, you don't want to go through the software exercise, you've got it in here. And you can save it right over the top if you want, or you can change it to a different name. So let's go ahead and change this to My Decor Coaster. Okay, and you should get in the habit of saving all your files as C2S. That's the default format for MDQ. And when you save in C2S, you're going to retain all the information about this file, what the stitches are, what the decors were, the G font, etc. So if you want to come back and change it, so let's say you want to make the same coaster, but you want to make a different initial in it, this will remember that it is text. And all you have to do is backspace over the G and type in a different text, change the font, whatever. If you put it into a machine format instead, then you're going to lose all that information. So get in the habit of saving it in the C2S format. So go ahead and click Save, and that'll save the file in the C2S format. You can see down here in my tab, it says mydecorcoaster.c2s. But of course, nothing in the world, no machine, can stitch a C2S file, so we do need to also save it in our machine format. So to do that, we come to our File icon, click Save As, and this time we're going to change from Floriani format C2S. We're going to click the down arrow and save to our format that we're going to use for our particular machine. So let's say if I have a baby lock machine, I can save it to that format, PES version 9. If I select that, it will save it. I click Save, and now I've got a PES file saved as well. I can put that on a stick, take it to my machine, and stitch it out. So that completes the software portion of the lesson. Let's go ahead and fire up our PowerPoint again, and we will get started on the assembly instructions. So you've seen this slide. Again, this is the one we're going to be doing, and let's go over the materials that are required for this particular project. You're going to need some Floriani batting. It's really up to you which one of our battings you choose. Our home deck batting, which is brand new, might be a great choice for this project. Doesn't really matter if it's fusible or not, but if you choose the non-fusible, that's your least expensive option. But if you've got some fusible, you can go ahead and use it. You're going to need a 4.5-inch square for each coaster, and then you want to go ahead and cut that square into 4-inch circles. So you're going to go ahead and pre-cut that into a 4-inch circle. You want to also get some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer. This is going to be the non-fusible, and you can choose any color. So whatever color you have, that will be fine. You're going to need some RNK embroidery perfection tape. You'll need fabric. You'll need a 5-inch square of fabric and 2 5-inch by 6-inch rectangles for each coaster, so 3 pieces for each coaster. You're going to need some Floriani embroidery thread for the top, bobbin thread for the bottom. Really doesn't matter what color bobbin thread you use. And lastly, you're going to need 120 millimeter or 4.75-inch minimum hoop size. Doesn't have to be a square hoop. Just the smallest dimension on your hoop has to be at least 4.75. or 120 millimeters. That's pretty common these days in a 5x7 hoop or 120 by 180 millimeter hoop. Okay, so those are the materials that you need. I just want to remind everybody that in these directions, we're going to be referring to the different colors as they were saved in the design. That's also the same in the printed instructions. However, the color names may appear different on your machine. Not to worry about that. Just use the color that shows up in your machine. And there are color changes in this design to make the machine stop between the steps, as we talked about earlier. But you don't have to change the color. In fact, it's probably a good idea not to. You can go ahead and leave the same thread in, but if you want to use a different color, you can, but you don't have to. Again, the color change is just there to make the machine stop. Now, of course, if you have a multi-needle machine, the machine is optimized not to stop between color changes, but to automatically go to a different spool. So if that's the case, you're going to have to go ahead and insert reserve stop commands or whatever your machine causes them, program pauses or whatever, to get the machine to stop between colors. Okay, we have two of those in this, one near the beginning and one near the end. So we'll point those out as we go. So go ahead and embroider the design. To start with, we're going to hoop up our nylon no-show mesh, make sure it's nice and tight, attach the hoop to the machine, load the Decor coaster design into the machine, and stitch out the first color. Again, that's going to be blue in the design, but doesn't really matter what color you use in the machine. If it was me, I'd be using the same color I'm going to use to match my fabric for everything. But in our example here, we've actually used a darker color thread simply so you can see the actual thread a little easier. Once you've stitched out this color, the machine should stop because it's going to go to the next color. And then you want to remove the hoop from the machine. And again, if you got a multi-needle, this is the color, one of the colors you're going to program the machine to stop after. Then what you want to do is take your 4-inch circle of batting, cut it out if you haven't already, and place it over the placement line so it's nice and lined up. So just get it in there within the stitch line. Next, you want to put your fabric over the top, center it over the batting, and you want to secure the edges with embroidery perfection tape. Now, you can see in this picture here that when Rita took the picture, she put the tape right on the long edge there. Now, as you'll see in the next shot, when we start embroidering, she came awful darn close to this tape. So you might want to put the tape in the corners. That's probably what I would have done. That will help you avoid stitching over the tape. And while embroidery perfection is great stuff for holding things, it's not the easiest thing to get out once you've stitched over it. So try not to stitch over it. Next, what you're going to do is return the hoop to the machine, stitch the second color, and that is going to tack down the fabric. And if you have a multi-needle, it's okay to go straight to the next color, so you don't need to put a stop in. It can go right to the next color. And when it does that, it'll stitch out color number 3. So it's going to stitch out the Decor and the Monogram, and that's going to be the brownish color. Of course, you can change that depending on what fabric you've chosen to go with this. And once it's stitched out the Decor and the Monogram, you want to go ahead and remove the hoop from the machine. Now, every time we tell you to remove the hoop, don't take the fabric and the batting and the stabilizer out of the hoop. Go ahead and leave it in the hoop. All right, so you want to leave it in the hoop. And we're next going to prepare our back fabric. Okay, we're going to take the two 5x6-inch rectangles and fold them in half with the right sides together and press them so they're nice. So it's unpressed and unfolded on the left side there. You can see what it looks like folded and pressed on the right side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place it on the design. What you want to do is you want to put the folded edge towards the center and match up the raw edges so that it lines up on the raw edges. It should look like something like this. And then you're going to repeat that with the other piece of fabric, but you're going to line up the other side so that you've got this overlap of the folded edges in the center. Then you're going to secure them again with embroidery perfection tape, and you're going to return the hoop to the machine and stitch out the last color. And again, that's going to be blue. We've put a stop in at the end of the last color, the brand color or the birch color, so that it stops before it stitches out this color. and it's going to become the seam when it's done stitching. So the next thing you want to do is remove the project from the hoop. Obviously, take the hoop out of the machine first. You want to trim about 1/8 inch around from the stitch line, and when you're trimmed, it should look like this. Now, you can't really see it, but what's happened here, of course, is that the top fabric is now hiding our embroidery. It's on the inside of this, but not to worry. What you're going to do next is turn it inside out. It's going to create a nice finished edge. You want to straighten it out, press it with an iron, and that completes the coaster project. And then you want to repeat this process, the whole project, for as many coasters as you want. Set of 4 might be nice, set of 8 if you've got a lot of need for coasters. Makes a great gift. And I want to thank everybody for attending. I hope that you'll use this video at home along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project. And don't forget, there's this great bonus coaster project also in the print instructions. And that concludes our webinar for tonight. And again, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you next time.